There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's great to see everyone again. I guess I'm not seeing you, but great to be here again for another episode of our LogiKelly speaking series. And it's our pleasure to welcome Mayor Gerald Albers from the city of Lloyd Minster here tonight. I'm very much looking forward to this because there is some really intricate, unique things that happen in Lloyd Minster that you'll be fascinated to hear about, governance wise. And of course, that's our topic is great governance. The mayor is second term, I believe, right now, and lived in Lloyd since 2005, I believe.
Yes, indeed.
Currently the vice president of cities for municipalities of Saskatchewan. And I think you have a long history in the customer service field.
I do. Yeah. Started in agriculture, went into the environmental world and the oil and gas, and that led me to municipal politics of all places.
So customer service led you nicely into public service, and here we are.
It was an interesting switch, but it's been great.
Good stuff. So with that, you know what? Maybe we'll get started talking about kind of our thoughts on great governance, and I'll throw it over to you, Darryl.
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, super happy to be here. I'm also really excited about this conversation. Thank you for that little bit of intro about our guest, about Mayor Albers today. I was actually hoping that we could get into a little bit more about you, about your background, how long you've been mayor, even if you want to say a little bit about your favorite part about being mayor, or some of the wrinkles or some of the issues that have kind of come up for you at a personal level.
Terrific. Thanks, Darryl. Thank you very much for the invitation, Kelly, to join you on your show. This is very exciting for myself to be a part of this, and governance is something near and dear to my heart. That's what led me to municipal government in getting elected in 2016. One of those, we were talking about our city, so I'm going to mix a little bit here as why Lloyd's a little bit of a special place. And most of your audience in Alberta will say, well, why did he get elected in 2016? Was the by-election? Well, our city, because we follow the Lloydminster Charter Act, which is a document, the legislative document that's identical in Saskatchewan and Alberta's legislatures that governs our city, we follow the Saskatchewan election schedule. So I was elected with a new council in 2016. Certainly governance was a huge issue. Transparency, openness, honesty from the perspective of getting answers from the elected officials and administration, just to be absolutely crystal clear of what was going on at the city and how things had happened and what were happening. And it's challenging. And now sitting in that seat, continuing to maintain that is critical. And very fortunate the council of the day I was elected with, and this past council elected again in 2020, everyone's on the same page about how important we are. And sometimes it comes back. We've given out information that can come back and maybe bite us down the road in different things, but from the perspective that the information's out there, and that was critical. So, I was just an ordinary taxpayer, frustrated with what was going on at City Hall, and started having some coffees with some folks, and they said, hey, we've got to do some digging in here and find out what's going on. And when the dust settled, they said, well, now we've got some answers, and we're still short a few answers. Why don't we get somebody to run for mayor? And you'd be a great guy to run for mayor. Oh, wow. Yeah. So here we go. We launched a campaign, and I got my wife as my campaign manager, and got some brochures printed, knocked on some doors, and started visiting with people, introducing myself. Living in a community is one thing, but getting to know that community and them getting to know you is a challenge. Depends on the size, of course, and how involved you are. But my work in the oil and gas industry took me away from home a fair amount, but my family was here and involved in things. So, the posters are important in science, and I had my name and my picture and a few small details, so that if people had saw me, they'd go, oh, that's who Gerald Albers is. Or if they knew my name and didn't know my face, I attached it, and that was really critical. So governance, back to it, it's something we live with each and every day as mayor and council, and we set the example for the community. And I really think it's so critical. I had a chance to serve on many boards and organizations beforehand and never had the in-depth training that we've received today and back in 2016, and really appreciate that, and continuously open up to that training whenever that opportunity exists. Somebody's offering a class and the Godfather, George Cuff's got something up. Hey, got to catch George. He's going to get, there's words of wisdom there. And there's many others that have come since George and continue to share their knowledge, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. I love that it kind of just started as a, as a personal thing in terms of wanting to better engage in your community, as I was hearing, and also just, seeing things that was kind of things they could have done a little bit better, and wanting to, find your role in looking for improvements. I think that's actually a really good start. For anybody who wants to consider politics, is really starting with, what are the good things that you want to try and kind of enact on. And, the topic of our conversation today, as Kelly mentioned, is governance, and you've talked about it a little bit. Some of the things that I heard was the importance of transparency and honesty. I'm hoping that we can unpack that a little bit. So in addition to those, really great kind of ideals, is there anything else around great governance that you want to mention, you or Kelly, after?
Well, I think that, being responsive to the electorate, the voters, the taxpayers, they may not always like the answer you give, but you have to give them an answer. I think that's what's critical. Again, there's sometimes I don't have an answer, and getting back to them is so critical as well, either by email, by telephone, by letter. But everybody deserves an answer. And like I say, I realize they don't always want to hear the answer we provide, but they have a concern, and it needs to be validated and try and provide them some information, because where did that concern come from? Sometimes it's a lack of information, sometimes the wrong information, sometimes it's just the information they've received is not fully understood. And as hard as we all try to have websites that are perfect, it's challenging sometimes to find information. I call it the Senate. It's that coffee table that's in your local establishment that debates the issues of the day, and you want to try and make sure that those folks have the right information. And looking forward to that Senate gathering once in a while again, now that the restrictions are coming off with COVID.
So Darryl, I'm going to go back to just one of the things that the mayor mentioned in his first piece of the conversation there. And maybe it's going to be part comment, part question, but what I was hearing from the mayor was, I think that he embraced this role as mayor of building a team. Like when he said, he was saying council and consistently using the word we. And I think that's really what sets apart the mayor that wants to just give everybody what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. And I think it's important to have your team on the same page. And so for me in governance, I think especially at that role of mayor, critical to have a team builder there and make sure that his team is all knowledgeable about the situation. And so when messaging comes from council, it's very consistent and very clear. So I don't know if the mayor wants to expand on that or not, but I certainly heard that in your first bit of your conversation was that team environment.
Thanks, Kelly. I think team is the best description. I sometimes catch myself, it's our city and rather than my city, and it is our city. It's a city made up of the residents, the community that as a whole, the administration and council, and working together. And it's challenging. It's challenging because administration may see the benefits of going down a certain road, and they bring that in the form of a request for decision to council. And council doesn't always agree with those decisions and sends it back, and it may need a rewrite, or we've got to change direction. But it is a team effort, and if we don't all work as a team, there's no I in team, as they've said, and this is for sure so important, because if I'm not sitting in this chair for whatever reason, and the deputy mayor is chairing, I want to make sure that individual is up to speed on things, as well as the rest of council, because no one likes a surprise. And just back to those, everyone deserves an answer. It's a lot easier if you have the information to provide an answer. in that. So again, it's governance is such a big umbrella. It's incredible that the pieces to it, because we haven't even talked about the financial piece yet, which is so important, because we talked about transparency, but it's transparency of our actions, our expense accounts, what we've been up to, and where are the finances of the community at, so that they understand, because nobody likes a tax increase. But if you can help explain a tax increase, it makes it a little easier than simply saying, oh, we need more money. You need to be able to explain it. You've got to have the facts and details to support it.
Yeah, and sorry, Darryl, I just got one more piece to add to that. And you just wove that story for me from both of the pieces that you shared, is that it's an enormous learning environment, especially for a new counselor. And I've seen many in the past that maybe have run on one issue. As soon as they get in there, it is an enormous learning curve, in that, I might have come because my road is in poor shape, or, the neighbors are loud. But you quickly learn, especially from folks who have, in their second, third term, that there's a lot to it. And, what might have seemed like a willy-nilly direction taken by the city has really been well thought out. And so I love the fact that you're talking about the orientations that you get now, and how they're a lot more robust than they used to be. I think one of the attractions now of becoming someone on council and throwing yourself into that ring is there are enormous learning opportunities that you get, both professionally and with the relationship.
Excuse me, the air conditioning is working really good here. You're absolutely right, Kelly. I think that the information that comes out, and again, there's a responsibility on both parts, both council to get good governance training, administration to hopefully help provide that. And I understand we've brought people in to help with that, because not everybody's an expert at everything. And if you're administration, I encourage administration, the CAOs, if you don't feel if you feel challenged, or if you feel you need some help, ask council and budget for that. When there's an election, that every 4 years you're going to have some money set aside to bring somebody in. And we talked about George Cuff. There's many different people that can come in, and I think, Kelly, you could likely give a good discussion for a day on the importance of governance. And there's a lot of great folks out there that do that. And the same token, council needs to be open to hear that. And I think that's that two-sided relationship again that's so important. That you mentioned, the one issue candidates are really challenging if they're set and saying, well, we're here to do a new dog park, and that's what I'm running on, and the neighbors think that's a great idea. That's terrific. But there is more to the city than a dog park, and into the town or village or summer village, whatever you've been elected to govern, there are pieces. There's statutory requirements. These bylaws drive people crazy. 3 readings and you can't do them all in one night. What's wrong with that? Well, there's potentials that you can do it, but there's also pitfalls by doing them 3 readings in one night, and not giving yourself taking that breath of fresh air, running it by the public and say, hey, we're thinking of doing this, this, and this. And 2 out of 3 might sit with them, but the third one's going to cause a lot of heartache and indigestion. Policies and procedures, and again, keeping them current. If you've got a policy that's not current, you might as well not have the policy, and things like that from that perspective. So, it's been a very interesting learning curve. I use my own family's experience. My dad sat on a rural municipal council in Saskatchewan many years ago, and 20 years later, my mom sat on that same council. And I've lost my dad to cancer, but I challenged my mom not that long ago. I said, how much training did you get around governance? Governance, what's governance? And nothing against what happened, but that's so critical, because it was many times they go unopposed. Nobody wants to sit on that governance or the council because it just takes up time, but it's so important, and to be able to follow through, because it's not, again, back to the taxpayers and ratepayers properly being serviced, but the staff as well, because without giving them the proper direction, a CAO is going to tend to make the best decisions they know based on the limited information they've been given. And again, we don't have to tell them what to do every day. It's back to strategic planning and all the pieces that form that. Where do you want to go over the next 4 years? What's the goals? And are you doing a good evaluation of your CAO on an annual basis? Because things can start to go positive and they can also slide. And if they start to slide and you don't catch it soon enough, it can be bad for everybody. So there's just another facet to this that is so interesting.
Yeah, when your conversation there, it's of course one of the continuing issues or challenges, but opportunities that Lloyd Minster has, of course, is that the border, of course, being on the border. And when you talked about grants, this is not necessarily going down the road that Darryl asked, but I was intrigued to ask about the grants. So are you afforded the opportunity to leverage grant funding from each province?
We are able to apply for grant funding on capital projects based on our population, and that's how our grant funding such as MSI and revenue sharing exist. For capital projects, I can give you an example. We're in the processes of constructing a new $81 million wastewater treatment plant to meet federal regulations and requirements. That took 6 sets of grants from 2 provinces and the federal government, because we accessed money from Alberta. Some was not matched, some was matched. And we had the same, we applied to Saskatchewan, we got grant money from Saskatchewan. It was a 3-year process to raise $50 million in grant money for that $81 million project. So we do it, and people often say, oh, Lloyd Minster, you guys get to double dip. Well, I can tell you, you find me a province that doesn't count all their beans. It's not in Saskatchewan. Alberta and Saskatchewan do a good job. There's so many residents on the Saskatchewan side of the city. That's what we receive revenue sharing money based on. For MSI as it currently exists in Alberta, we get so much based on the population there. And that's the way it works. We put it all into one big pot here at the city. Our CFO does a great job. She gathers up all the eggs, and we deliver the services on a daily basis. And there's no separation. That's what's so unique about our city. If you were to visit me here today, Kelly, and I took you out in the street and walked over about 250 feet from City Hall, you'd be standing in Saskatchewan. I'm sitting in Alberta right now. A piece of asphalt, one street divides the province of Saskatchewan and Alberta in our city. Yet at the end of the day, we treat it as one city. The water lines flow under the asphalt, wastewater lines flow under the asphalt, gas, telephone. We provide a seamless service, and it's really interesting as we get to know provincial ministers and premiers and invite them to come and see it. So when am I in Alberta? Well, if you close your eyes, I'll tell you. But here we are. You're going back and forth across the street, and I'll zigzag across the city 2 or 3 times, giving a tour to any provincial minister or federal minister, premier that can make their way here, and the prime minister. This is how this operates, and there's no city that I've found in Canada or the U.S. yet, and I'm still searching, that operate like we do. Flin Flon, Manitoba is a town, and they have a small subdivision, I understand, on the Saskatchewan side of the border. Beautiful hard rock up there. That's the Canadian Shield at its best. You get into Gatineau and Ottawa. A river separates it, and they have 2 councils. Here we have 1 council. We have myself as mayor, 6 elected officials, which can council members that can come from anywhere in the city. We could have 6 residents of Saskatchewan, 6 of Alberta, or whatever we make up as. And that's what's so unique about our city. And it makes it a great city, but the challenges that exist is that trying to get 3 governments together, I can tell you it took 3 years to buy into that project, which was federally, I won't say demanded, it was by regulation brought to us and required. And it's a challenge to bring everybody together on the funding thing. And I imagine most mayors can relate getting 2 governments together, provincial and federal, but this one was a little bit more tricky.
So the myth is officially busted that there's some advantage to having both sides, and someone might have thought before your explanation there that you got double the grants or whatever, but that is so far from the case. I'm curious now, when you said that, sorry Darryl, I just this is getting my head thinking here. So What is your current makeup of council? Is it kind of equal as far as Alberta, Saskatchewan, or what's the current makeup?
The current makeup, I believe, is 6 Albertans to 1 member of Saskatchewan.
Okay.
And
And
it's
that's
just-
probably not historically the case. It's probably more blended.
And that, the last council in 2016 was 5 and 2. 6 and 1, and you're right. It's gone in different circuits. So from that perspective, and I think that what's the great part about this, because we don't have a ward system, is a taxpayer in Saskatchewan side that lives on the Saskatchewan side of the city, even though it's in the city, phones gets treated the same way. When a call comes in, they get answered the same way. If it's a letter, it's we're not big enough to go into wards, I don't believe. We can drive across the city in a reasonable fashion at times, especially after being in Toronto and stuck on the 401 for a couple hours. Give me a real appreciation of being back here in beautiful Lloydminster. But the challenges I talked about with grant funding, there is challenges, and I'm likely the luckiest mayor on the other side, because if I can't get along with one premier, hopefully I can get along with the other. Same with the governments, but that is one of the interesting parts, because we attend 2 times as many meetings as most communities. We are a member of SUMA. We talked about municipalities in Saskatchewan in the beginning. There was a vote, and it's gone back to SUMA.
Okay, there you go.
Just for your information. And we also belong to AUMA. And so it's really a uniqueness to be able to, in my role as mayor, meet with mayors of the cities of Alberta and the mayors of Saskatchewan, as well as at the regular conventions and with towns and villages. But I get the chance to share some of the highlights from one side to the other. And often people say, well, Alberta's bigger, that's better. There are some definite advantages in Alberta, but there's certain things that are coming out of Saskatchewan. And I have that opportunity to be that conduit, which is really nifty. And I really enjoy that opportunity, because I usually catch it from both sides. Which side are you talking from, Darryl, when I'm talking as a mayor with my fellow mayors? Is that Saskatchewan talking, or is that Alberta? And we have a great joke about it. That's good. I don't mind.
Wow, yeah, that answered a lot of questions that I had. Thank you for bringing up all those things that you asked as well, Kelly. I was also wondering about the grants, and then also some of the different challenges that you have with with the very unique situation that your city is in. And I was actually wondering, because I know you said so much about responsiveness and the importance of that. What does the fact that you have to deal with 2 provinces, 2 different governments, and you have to find some kind of middle ground with community, and then the 3 governments, as you were talking about, what does responsiveness look like in that context? I'm curious.
Well, responsiveness, that's I guess it's a lot of dialogue and good communication. And it's, just as we started out talking about why I'm here and the reasons I got elected, I believe that led to that is just the same with the government. It's important to share information with our fellow municipalities, as well as our provincial and federal government representatives. And it's, it's more difficult as we move up the chain, because in Ottawa, it's a little tougher sometimes to reach out to ministers. And we've got that uniqueness right now. We don't have an MP that represents either Saskatchewan or Alberta directly in Parliament. The Honourable Jim Carr, Minister of the Prairies, in essence, without portfolio, represents us. So having that challenges us a little bit. And, I appreciate the opportunities he's given us to chat about things. Provincially, got 2 MLAs and 2 MPs to keep updated, as well as the respective ministries. So, you send a letter, you're basically copying another government if you're dealing with the Lloydminster Charter, as an example that we talked about earlier. It's important because they both have a stake in the community. And that's been a task I've got, and working away at helping the governments understand that. It's not just one government, it's both governments. And when we talk about things, we want to make sure they're talking to each other, because it's a lot easier if they're working together to solve the problems, because be it social problems, be it infrastructure problems, it's going to take all the parties to come together. Policing, that all requires the support of both provinces. We have the RCMP here, but there's two different jurisdictions. You cross the street and you're going to get a speeding ticket that's different from the speeding ticket on this side of the street. So it's one of those things you get used to. And we're talking about city council and administration doing twice as much work. Imagine being a police officer in this city and knowing two sets of traffic acts, as an example. So it challenges us. We have paramedics and EMTs licensed in 2 provinces so that they can practice, because they're back and forth across the border. So our doctors are used to it. They're dual licensed in 2 provinces. Lawyers dual licensed with 2 bars associations. So it does add some uniqueness to the whole community. And like I say, I could talk about challenges that come up on various fronts.
Is there anything that came up for you, Kelly? I have a couple of questions, but.
Yeah, no, I had a question, but I answered it myself. I was wondering about where you get the bill from for policing. Is it from Alberta or is it from Saskatchewan? But where does it come from? Which side?
So actually, as our municipality of our size, we have a contract with the RCMP.
Yeah.
So we are supported by the Alberta government as a city with the funding formula they have. We've got a little challenge in Saskatchewan that we're still trying to resolve over the charter and where the detachment's located, because it moved from Saskatchewan a number of years ago to Alberta, and still got a little outstanding with the government of Saskatchewan that I try to poke the premier about every so often, but we're getting close. We can get that charter updated with the ministers. We'll hopefully resolve that issue. But yeah, it's a contract we hold with the RCMP as a municipality.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, one of the things that kind of stuck out for me was this idea of collaboration. I feel like, that's really important for responsiveness, obviously. Collaboration within the staff and then council itself and administration, making sure that you're as responsive as you possibly can be to your community, which is in a very unique circumstances, as we've kind of unpacked. I'm so curious about what makes that collaboration successful at the level that you have to that your city kind of deals with. What works?
Well, I think starting with the staff, I'm going to go back to some things George Cuff told me and some other people when we attended our first workshop after getting elected in 2016. The staff are your staff the day you get elected. So if you had issues with the staff and the way things were done, they're now your issues. And I appreciate that, and working through that with the CAO and, in this case, a city manager for ourselves. So, and realizing we have one city staff member that reports to the governance. That's the CAO/city manager. And that becomes his or her challenge from that point on. If there's staffing issues, we have to keep our fingers in, as I've been taught, and our hands out, and that's the way it works from that perspective. The next collaboration is building trust, and that's back to doing what you say and saying what you do. And I think it's a dual that way, both, that the staff feel comfortable enough that they will greet you on the street and say hi and not be afraid because, well, I can't talk to the mayor, I can't talk to council. They're ratepayers in many cases, taxpayers, they're residents of our community. I'm hoping I hear good news, but I'm also realizing that I might hear some bad news, and I appreciate their open and honest opinion and taking that, but then working through the system with sitting down with the city manager and saying, hey, hearing some things, and if that's what's happening, and from that perspective, or sharing the great news that, we've got some satisfied team members from that perspective. The biggest challenge in our business, as I call it business, is we're in the customer service business. The only hard commodity we sell is lots for residential, commercial, and industrial development, like a developer would as well in the city. But everything else is service, and how people see that service and how they measure that service. So getting engagement from the staff and the community to understand that in a collaborative approach. And, no one has one answer, all the answers. So if a resident brings a concern forward, hearing that resident, engaging administration and saying, you guys got a lot of history dealing with this. How have you dealt with it in the past? And also looking at new ways. I think thinking out of the box is critical for collaboration to happen as well, because we can't continue to do the same old thing over and over again and expect a different result. And stole that from somebody else, I believe, at that line. But bottom line is that I think it's so important that we get to be creative. We've got less dollars to work with in comparison if we looked at actual hard dollars than in the past. Construction costs are up. We deal with an immense number of different taxes that we don't get rebated back from, that be it federal or provincial, and none of our taxpayers want to pay more taxes. So yeah, there's the occasional tax increase, but at the end of the day, we've got to be very creative with how we spend those dollars. Asset management's become a huge thing, and helping people again engage in that discussion so they understand it, so we get collaboration. Because if somebody says, hey, I'm willing to let you, this is a better time to shut down the street in September because we've got various things going on, hey, let's work with it and see if we can manage that. It gets a little tough in the construction world if we're digging up water and sewer lines because of the winter season approaching. But if you're just doing some gutters and curbs, can you put it off till September rather than wreck the parade route in July, as an example? So trying to engage people. And as we look at new bylaws and policies, again, same thing. It's been most difficult. The last 17 months, I can't tell you how hard it is for myself, and I'm sure others, that I like sitting down with people and looking them in the eye, having a cup of coffee or whatever it is, and shaking their hand and saying, I hear you. I'm going to see if we can fix it, or I appreciate your input. It's come in the form of email and phone calls and texts and letters, but it's just not been the same. And I know people are really excited to get back to that, because that was, again, something started in 2016. We really focused on getting out a couple times a year, inviting the public to join us, having some display boards up, talking about what we're thinking, asking questions. What do you think where do you want to see money spent in the budget going into next year? Because we're already starting that again. Engagement with the community to get that collaboration, so they understand that, hey, why are we spending the kind of money, and what does it cost to have a police officer? What does a full-time fire department cost? What does it cost to do snow removal in our city? And it's the eye-popping answers that you give are incredible, but those are the numbers we live with. It's not cheap to do a total snow removal in a city of the size of that we have. And it depends on your city or your town, but it's retrospect to the budget. Because if you live in a town of 3,000, it's still going to cost X number of dollars, and that's still a chunk of money out of the budget.
Sounds like collaboration just comes with the job.
It really does. It really does. I think that, reaching out and starting with conversations and starting, having those conversations at the front end through the process, and hopefully when the loop's closed, sharing that information at the backside.
Yeah, like what I'm hearing is one of our common themes in these conversations is, I think those that do it well understand that it's a relationship that you have, and with any other relationship, you're going to get out what you put in. And I also heard demonstrating value. No one, I haven't encountered a municipality where anybody was jumping up and down wanting to pay more taxes either. So, and with these, the constraints that we may be facing in a resource-driven economy across this country, I think that there will be even more impetus on us to demonstrate that value and continue to mine from within and try to get as much as we possibly can from that investment.
Absolutely.
That those citizens have entrusted us with. So
they have, and it's so interesting. We just received our own personal property tax notice yesterday in the mail, and my wife and I had a long discussion about it. She's one of my favorite fans, and she's also my biggest critic, because she said, "Hey, explain this. What's going on in this tax bill?" And I going, wow. And again, the system that we have is imperfect. Our tax bill reflects the education tax that's gathered and collected on behalf of the province. We also have an additional education seamless levy that we provide to the school boards to ensure, again, back to our uniqueness of our city, to cover off the costs that are partly funded maybe by the Saskatchewan government, partly funded by the Alberta government, but trying to ensure students are treated, there's no difference depending on where you live in the city to the quality of education you get, and some of the extras that may be on the Saskatchewan side or vice versa, the Alberta side. So, but anyways, that amounts to on average 30% less of that money you send to the city. And I go back to one of my former bosses. He says, just as I was running for council, he says, go for it. But just remember, the largest single check I write every year is to the city of Lloydminster. And he knew exactly to the cent what he paid in property tax. And I said, ooh. So since then, I've asked him, how much do you pay in income tax? And he says, it's too much. I says, you can't name that number. He says, I can't. We stay in contact. How much do you pay the provincial government in taxes? I don't have a clue. But most people, the largest single check they write or payment that they have in one lump sum is property tax, if that's where they're at, if they're not on PIT. So, it's really, really interesting how that works. And yeah, it makes it, we are accountable. And we have to be accountable. We need to be able to explain it. That's why I've got a binder on my desk that's headed out to my vehicle as I, again, out with people saying, where did that money go? I can sit down and explain that. Just a few fact sheets, carry a report, the annual report that's published from last year to say this is some of our accomplishments, and a copy of the strategic plan going forward saying this is where we hope to take the city over the next 4 years.
See this big smile? When you said strategic plan during these sessions, that's a big smile right here. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. That's what we preach around here, hey, Darryl?
No, I think if a strategic plan is no different than a plan on a trip. Because if you don't have a plan on the trip, you don't know where you're going to end up. But if you want to get to Banff, you're going to figure out a route and how to get there. And you may encompass a stop for fuel. You may encompass a stop at the dinosaurs in Drumheller if you're traveling that way. And you may want to try some great pie in Irricana on your way to Banff. But depending which route you take, you might not get to see the dinosaurs, and you might not get the pie, and you might end up in Rocky Mountain House and end up going through Nordegg and end up through, overseeing the Saskatchewan River landing. So there's many pieces.
Agreed.
So I've got one last question here. So we've talked a lot about challenges. I wonder if there are any opportunities that you've kind of seen through this, through our COVID times.
I think, opportunities. Certainly the opportunity to come back out of this with, knowing what we had before and what we want to get back to, and what we've missed, and really desiring to make things better. And communication, engaging the community, but economic development is huge. We want to strengthen the businesses that we have. We want to support them, and we're trying to do that now. We also want to make sure that we get our flag out, that people know that we're open for business. There's immense opportunities. We've got a great labor force here. We're strategically located on Highway 16 and 17, served by both national railways, something that not too many communities in Western Canada can proudly say, and still be able to get home in less than 10 minutes in most places in this community, and find recreation and cultural facilities that rival the big cities of Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, and Regina. So, it's putting on my salesman's hat and going out and chatting with people, talking about the things that are there, and improve on what we've got, getting WestJet back here on a daily basis, those kind of things. So where, the opportunity is what we want to make it. I think every community has an opportunity. We don't all get to attract 5 or 6 Amazon warehouses to our community, nor will we be able to start up a new grain elevator in our community necessarily. But is there a processing plant? Is there a fabrication plant? Is there what's out there? And with, we're just going through fiber optic installation throughout our city, working again with 2 providers, one public, SaskTel, one private, TELUS. We were able to get everybody to the table, and they're working at that. With the change that we've just seen over the last 17 months, the idea of having someone live in our city and do business around the world excites me. And I think people are seeing that. And I really challenge people that live in Vancouver, Toronto, even Edmonton. You want a quality of life second to none. We've got an opportunity in Lloydminster for you. We've got reasonable housing, great water, pretty good streets. I won't say we've got perfect streets like some people might say, but definitely don't have to fight the traffic like the 401. And I think that's what each community is going to have to do, is realize their strengths and get out and market those strengths and let people know, and welcome people home if they left the prairies for, in some cases. And again, the old rivalry between Saskatchewan and Alberta. What was the greatest export from Saskatchewan? People. What was the greatest import in Alberta? People from Saskatchewan. So we can offer you both here. You could cheer for your favorite football team on either side of the city, your favorite hockey team. We don't discriminate here. It's we're wide open, and we'll work with anybody.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that story, especially when you're talking about the fiber optics and the internet, and how I just think this new generation is going to expect that. It's no longer a luxury. I think it's become expected. And you're so right. You can do from Lloydminster, you can run a business, a global business. Absolutely. From your basement and be hugely successful, and enter the housing market in a way that you might not be able to in any other locale. So there's some huge opportunity. I think you're right.
Absolutely. And, from a competitive, we talked about property tax, very competitive in comparisons to cities equivalent or larger in Alberta, as well as Saskatchewan. So, from that perspective, tried to balance that lifestyle. And, it's always ongoing, because we don't have every store in the world, but we've got a lot of great stores. We've got a lot of people with passion. What was incredible watching again back over the last 17 months, how businesses, family businesses, generational businesses have transferred and their transformation. They've taken, in particular, one restaurant where they've shot videos and they've got Snapchat going, they've got Instagram, Facebook, singing, dancing. It's awesome. And, it just made people think about it. Campaign that was worked through the city, our Chamber of Commerce, the Construction Association, Startup, Lakeland College. Think Lloyd first. So important to think about those local businesses, because those businesses on this street and on our avenues all support our community each and every day. They support the local 4-H clubs. They support the dance club. And it's been challenging, but those are our friends and neighbors that work in those businesses. And how do we help people engage to think, spend those dollars at home? Because it's so critical to make the bills paid, but as well as provide for their families and opportunities to grow. Because if a local business doesn't have something you're looking for, they can likely get it for you if you talk to the manager or the store owner and say, hey, I'm looking for this. Yeah, we can get that in for you. And let's keep those dollars at home, because it's so critical. The marketplace is challenging enough already, and all the things that they faced. And I think here's the opportunity to really support our businesses at home and help them grow. And, as I talked about it, we've done some work with retention. We're going to continue to do work with retention, help them expand and attract new business. That's the 3 pillars when it comes down to economic development in my world, is, retain, help grow, and expand, and get those new businesses here that are looking for that opportunity. And as you said, Kelly, fiber optics, if you'd have told me about this when I was a kid, I'd have said, what are you talking about? And the internet and that kind of stuff. I didn't even have a computer in high school when I left. I ran into some very basic programming in university back a long time ago. I won't say when. And today I've got 2 screens. I've got a computer, I've got an iPad, I've got a phone that opens me up to the world. And as you said, that's the generation of today sees it that way. The economy is now a very worldly economy.
Great conversation. Anything from you, Darryl, still, or?
No. Yeah, I'm thankful for this conversation as well. Thank you for sharing so much about your city. There's so much that I didn't know about Lloydminster. So that's really cool.
Darryl, I heard an invite in there. I didn't share with Darryl. I did get an invite in my first conversation previous to this with the mayor. And then he reiterated he's going to drive us down that street and show us exactly the
Absolutely. They call it the white minivan tour. Some prominent political people have already had it, and I invite anybody that wants a tour. I'll be more than glad to give you a tour and show you how we make this work, because it is unique. I'll just give you an example. Our water comes out of the North Saskatchewan River. on the Alberta side of the city, comes up a pipeline along the border, crosses into Saskatchewan, gets treated, gets dispensed out to all of the city as per Saskatchewan water security requirements. Then it comes back through the wastewater and gathers in a wastewater treatment plant that's out of town, but actually in the city yet, but on the back side, ways out, and then is treated and makes its way back to the North Saskatchewan River further down. So our water makes a trip all over in the two provinces before it makes it back. And that's just one of the anomalies from that perspective. Otherwise, we'd be crazy. 2 treatment plants, 2 wastewater treatment plants. Yeah, much better to do it with one.
Yeah, I'm super grateful for tonight. I want to share. So Darryl and I show up usually in our attire that we are, and to show how great. Like, I'm so grateful for these mayors and anyone who puts their names forward to sit on council and represent their community and their citizens. The mayor's got a suit on because the day started at like 7 o'clock with an MP, and so we're inheriting that kind of long day, and it's so appreciated by us, and thanks for taking the time today.
Kelly, again, thanks for the invitation. Darryl, thanks for the great discussion and questions. And it's hard not to be proud of a city, and I'm very proud of the community I represent. I'm very honored to be the mayor of this community. It's a great community, and very proud to promote it, and welcome anybody that wants to come for a visit. Please stop in our city. Many people tell me, oh, I passed through your city for fuel, some food, maybe a break. But then I'll talk to somebody and they say, I actually drove around your city. What a beautiful city. I said, yeah, 16 Highway is a beautiful piece of road, but there's a lot more to Lloydminster than 16 Highway. So come on out and we'll show you. And hey, depending how soon, if you enjoy chuck wagons, July and August, we'll be hosting chuck wagon races here for anybody that has an inkling to see those chuck wagons.
There you go. Open for business.
Open for business.